We are halfway through 2023, and some really interesting trends for consumer 3D printing have emerged. Whether it's all about speed, all about Klipper, bit of the same, carbon fiber, graphite, and lots of fans. Let's talk about it. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here and you like learning all about 3D printing, 3D scanning, and more, make sure to leave a like and get subscribed. We're gonna be talking all about the trends recently that have come up in the 3D printing industry, and a lot of them are kind of circling around a singular company, Bambu Lab. Now, if you are new here, you won't know that I'm still kind of on the fence about it. My experience has been a little rough with Bambu in general, but that's not the case for a lot of people. And companies have taken note of this. From Cheedy Tech or Keedy Tech with the X-Max 3 to Creality's K1, and I think Kingroom is working on a Bambu clone as well. Companies are finding out that consumers don't mind spending a little bit of money to get a lot more value with their 3D printers. Now, what does this mean? What is this value that you're talking about? A lot of it comes down to speed. For those that don't know, Bambu came out with the X1 series as well as the P1 series, with the X1 Carbon and the P1P being the flagship models for both of those lines. Those printers are not only fast, but at least on the X1 series, they have a LiDAR sensor, so they're able to generally adjust print settings right before it goes and prints, which make for pretty decent prints when they work. This has really made a lot of people look at the cost of their 3D printer and say, is this $200 Ender 3 worth it? We've seen a shift away from cheap printers and into printers that have more value, even though there are companies that are still testing the lower limit of what they can sell machines for. They are still more expensive than they previously have in months or even years prior. We can see that the $200 Ender 3 is pretty much a thing of the past, with companies like Soval producing the SV06 and the SV06 Plus, both of which we've looked at on live streams. We'll link to them in that description down below so you can take a look, that are effectively Prusa Mark 3S's for way less money. We even call them poverty Prusas around the shop here. They have like 95% of what a Prusa has for quite a bit less money, and you can Klipperize them if you wanted. We are seeing Klipper coming out with companies producing these pads, if you will, which are effectively Raspberry Pis with screens built into a nice little enclosure that you can plug your 3D printer into. These will be able to run Klipper or some bastardized version of Klipper that the company uses to make your printer run faster, where a lot of the processing is done on the pad side rather on the actual motherboard side of the printer itself, allowing you to run much faster speeds because you stop being limited by processing power. A lot of this does require an acceleration for something called input shaping, which has been a huge value to this industry. And while input shaping has been around for a while, it's only really caught on since, well, Bambu, and more specifically to me, Voron, have come around and gained some more market popularity that we haven't seen in years prior. Input shaping is effectively noise-canceling headphones, but for your 3D printer. And instead of the machine moving and vibrating, producing a ringing effect on parts, and this is pretty obvious, it'll look like the part is wavy to the naked eye, it can actually stop that by feeding a canceling frequency. It enables printers to go from accelerations at like 800 to 1,000 on your standard 3D printers to 20,000 millimeters per second squared. That can be low on some machines. And yeah, that's 20 meters per second squared of acceleration. So effectively, you're going from 0 to full speed in no time flat. This enables you to print much faster. And that's where this idea of the speedboat race has come from. The benchies to be as fast as humanly possible. Voron has previously won this race, and there are some people that are still souping up their Vorons to win the race. But now manufacturers are trying to get in on this cash cow. Bambu Lab was really one of the first to cash in on it, where they produced a product that could do a 14-minute benchy with Bambu's, proprietary material. And I don't know if it qualified for the speedboat race, but I will tell you, my first experience with it was just jaw-dropping. I never worked with a printer with input shaping before, so to see a benchy that to me is normally an hour long take 14 minutes was kind of crazy. Now, of course, the problem with that is noise. Bambu and other printers like it are very loud. For some reason, Bambu has chosen to adopt a carbon fiber rod with a graphite bronze style bushing that rides along that carbon fiber. Now, carbon fiber is really abrasive, and this graphite, bronze, brass, whatever mix of 11 herbs and spices they're using is not something that I have a lot of faith in long term to last. It appears that this is done to reduce your sprung weight because, of course, a hollow carbon fiber tube and a bushing is a lot lighter weight than a solid hardened steel rod and solid steel ball bearings. Maybe that has enabled them to go faster, but at what cost? We've seen other manufacturers follow suit, with GD Tech actually most recently adjusting their X-Max 3, which was held from release because they needed to do some last minute design changes. One of those being dropping those carbon fiber rods and bushings for a more traditional steel shaft and bearing system, which, while is considerably easier to service from a consumer standpoint, does produce a lot more weight and inertia when you're moving that machine, meaning it might not accelerate as fast as it would previously. Personally, while it is fun to go fast if you need to, I do feel that there is quite a bit of value in making sure that you get there on time when you need to. And while Bambu has made the parts relatively cheap, it is the labor that tends to eat you alive in those processes. And really it comes down to that amount of time that you're willing to spend on those machines. As someone that has been putting a lot of effort into maintenance on their Bambu, it is a lot of work and it's not very easy. And due to a lack of being open source, it means that outside of their own documentation, videos that others have done, it is kind of a F around and find out method when it comes to working on these machines. And it seems that we've moved away from open source as the de facto style for 3D printers, where companies are starting to remain more closed source, whether that is locked behind a patent or just a trade secret. And companies like Bambu and even E3D have done this. E3D recently launched their brand new high flow Revo, which we covered in a recent video. We'll card to it so you guys can take a look. And while it is an absolutely amazing platform, basically gives you the Bondtech CHT, but in a Revo, it is behind the CHT patent, which of course is licensed to Bondtech from 3D Solex, and it appears that Bondtech and E3D are working together on that. While I love that that is now an opportunity for those with the Revo system, it does suck that it is still something that is locked behind closed doors. This industry would not exist, or certainly wouldn't be at its current place, if it wasn't for open source. And there is a part of me that will always love open source, but it seems as though the value to the end consumer of it being open source is not there anymore. And I feel like that is part of the challenge of democratization. Bambu has shown that you can actually make a printer that looks good, sometimes performs well, and while it is a little loud, still looks like something that might actually come out of a factory owned by Apple or Foxconn, regardless of their ethical practices. It looks good. While you could probably get it by your significant other as a hardware appliance, the first time they turn it on and they think something turned on in their bedside table rather than the tool in your shop,
Honey, what was that sound?
they might be questioning what exactly is going on, if you catch my drift. I fully understand the desire to go fast. I like going fast when I can, but I believe that there needs to be some sort of speed limit in this industry, because when you do start to go fast, your brakes become a real problem. We've seen Bambus run so hard into a part that it bends or even completely snaps off the heat break from the printer itself, and that is a real bad time. Thankfully, I have not dealt with that, but there have been a handful of people that have, and I have a feeling as more people think that 3D printing is just a slice, click, print, and not more of a still learning science, the more of those failures that we will see occurring. But there's been a lot more this year as well. High flow, has been huge. As we look at printers that go faster, your limitation actually starts to be your heater and your nozzle. And with people like the Basel nozzle from Annex Engineering, Bondtech CHT, even these Chinesium grade CHT clones that are coming out of no-name sellers out of AliExpress, high flow has been a big talk in this industry. We like going fast, but if you're limited simply because you can't heat up the plastic fast enough, well, that seems like a really dumb way to limit it. It's like having a car with 1,000 horsepower that can't go over the speed limit. What is the point of having 1,000 horsepower if you can't pass the Honda Civic? And the heaters do seem to be a bit of that issue. And while there have been advances from companies like Fadis to make better flowing hot ends with better flow characteristics, I don't have any experience with them, so I'm not really able to comment. If Fadis does want to send some over, y'all know how to reach me. Links are in that description down below. What we've also been noticing is that in this industry, we're getting a lot more fans that do want to kick a couple of bucks into that creator fund. And hey, maybe if you are that kind of person, you can find those links down below as well. With tiers starting as low as $1, and at the $10 tier and higher, get to come hang out in our private Discord where we do things like live product development for products like the Politician that we are getting ready to put into closed beta in the coming weeks, even though it's been some interesting challenges. If you're part of the Discord, you know all about it. Oh yeah, and live talks about upcoming merch from 3D Musketeers. These are all things that our Patreon members get to see before the rest of the world. So if you want to come and hang out, links are down below. And hey, liking the video is free, subscribing is free. We greatly appreciate that kind of support. We've also seen companies looking to cut corners, and sometimes those corners aren't exactly corners that I agree with. Soval specifically had a lot of people saying, huh? When the SV07 came out. Because the SV06 and the SV06 Plus are legitimately, in my opinion, one of the best value 3D printers on the market for someone that is not afraid to tinker. I still believe if you are afraid to tinker, a Prusa is still the best value. And I recognize that they're not the fastest, they're not the prettiest, they're not anything. They are the Toyota Corolla. It will never die. I have 9 Mark III's. They just run all the damn time without problems. There's a reason for that. It's because they're built like tanks. While you can do the kit, if you want to learn more about it, you can buy them pre-assembled. And while, yes, the Mark IV is pretty expensive and input shaping is still in beta, we will be seeing very fast times out of the Prusa here very soon. But we've seen companies like Soval move away from bearings and hardened rods back to V-wheels. Anchor came into the market around the same time Bambu did, both of them having incredibly successful Kickstarter campaigns and successfully delivering the promises to their backers. Anchor, with the Anchor make, from my look at it, is effectively an Ender 3 that looks really pretty. She got a thick booty, and that's thick with 3 C's, ladies and gentlemen. That's got Clipper on it, with some other fanciness to it. It's still a V-wheel bed slinger. And that is exactly what the SV07 is. And I think Soval was going after Anchor Make in that, where a lot of people expected them to go after Bambu or expected them to go in a different direction. I would love to see a from-factory clipperized version of the SV06 and the SV06 Plus. But until Soval can do that, stay tuned because we are going to have an entire upgrade series coming up where we do live streams to upgrade the SV06 and the SV06 Plus to be, well, more reliable and a little bit harder, if you catch my drift. We've also seen that the companies are realizing that consumers care more about quality than they do price. And while there are still some companies that are committed to keeping the price low, the value that is being offered is much higher than previous generations. Clipper is now the new thing that everybody wants on their printer, and manufacturers totally see this, and they're now starting to offer it. No more will you have to buy a Raspberry Pi at crazy marked up prices or keep clicking F5 on your favorite retailer or get lucky and have a Micro Center near you. Please, Micro Center, I want one in Tampa. Although I will drive to Miami one. But when it comes built in, well, it makes it a lot easier. Unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of these companies that are utilizing these open source solutions like Klipper, not really playing by the open source rules, where they are making their own distros of Klipper, meaning that if they choose to no longer support it, you can't get any future updates and upgrades unless you choose to effectively rebuild Klipper from scratch yourself. And while that is possible, yours truly is overtly terrified of it, because I don't know much about coding. What I do know is that I am an end user that has a tendency to brick things, and I don't want to do that, especially when I'm looking at a 3D printer. So to me, something like a Big Tree Tech pad, or maybe one of Creality's Sonic pads, should they run a legitimate version of Klipper and not Creality's own distro of Klipper, those seem to be like a more viable option for those of you that want kind of a plug and play Klipper experience. The cloud is another one of those big things that companies are starting to tout. With Creality and their actual cloud, which, by the way, still a huge issue with intellectual property to this day. Before you do go and support Creality, please make sure that you understand Creality Cloud is still stealing models from creators. It is still having massive issues when it comes to intellectual property and who owns what. And creators are just kind of giving up because, well, Creality is doing nothing about it. Don't believe me? Here's a video where we covered all about it. And if you still don't believe me, we're going to link to an active lawsuit with Creality where they are going up against Artec, a 3D scanning company, who is accusing them of stealing intellectual property for the CR Scan Lizard and a few of their other softwares inside of Creality itself. Pattern of problems? I don't know. You decide for yourselves. At the end of the day, Creality does make a relatively cheap product, and I mean it in every sense of that word. It's not affordable. It's cheap. The K1 has been wrought with issues, from Sam Prentice having one of the first ones on the market being an absolute dumpster fire for him, to other creators getting them in and they're just failing in really odd ways. We've covered a few of these issues inside of Print Fix Friday. We'll cart the series so you guys can take a look, but it's been in the past couple of weeks that we've seen more of those failures pop up in that series. Looking beyond what we have here, I believe we're going to see a lot more super speed machines coming out, with companies potentially not really ready to deal with what happens when you start to move a machine that fast that isn't really built to move that fast. Remember, a lot of these companies come from a time and place of making something as cheap as humanly possible to gain a small percentage of the market, because a small percentage of the market is still a non-trivial amount of money. I'm not so certain that these companies are really ready to deal with the level of support that might come from this. Certainly Bambu hasn't been, and they've been making strides to try and change that. In fact, they recently completely revamped their ticketing system. We'll see if it's any better. I'm sure I'll be needing to submit a support ticket here relatively soon. But as time goes on, companies change, and the values that we all see as a community change. I think we're going to push more for democratizing the machinery, and more specifically, the slicers. Companies that are really only focusing on the hardware, I think are going to be missing out on a pretty big portion of business. One of the big reasons to go with Prusa is because Prusa Slicer integrates directly. And while, yes, any manufacturer can submit tuned profiles to Prusa and they add them right in, it's not always something that these manufacturers will do. So instead, they have their own whatever version of outdated Cura that they want to provide, with profiles that aren't very great and basically no support from the manufacturer themselves when it comes to building profiles, getting updates, or anything like that. I hope that we can return to an industry that does appreciate open source and doesn't just look at the value of the machine itself. These machines that are closed source are built upon the shoulders of the open source giants that enabled this research to exist in the first place. And so part of me says we should be still tipping our hat back to those that really made all of this possible. Maybe that makes me a bit of an old soul, and that would make sense. The car that I drive every day is older than a fair bit of our viewership. It's 21 years old. But because I know how to take care of it, it's fine. Although it does need its EGR port cleaned. I can stream that, but I really don't know if that's something you guys would care to see. Let me know in the comments down below. But what do you guys think? I know I am obviously going to be missing some trends in this industry, but from my perspective, at least on the consumer side of 3D printing, it seems to be all about speed. And, well, carbon fiber, graphite, then not so much carbon fiber, and graphite. It is about copying who did something slightly different than others and who can really provide the best value to their consumers. While I believe at the end of the day, we as consumers absolutely win, I would be lying if I said I wasn't immediately concerned for what it looks like when the machines are no longer open source. Because it means that you're kind of stuck figuring it out yourself or hoping the company that you bought the machine from has decent enough support that you can get what you need without struggling to communicate it to someone who might not understand what you're talking about. Speaking of, next week is my 6-month anniversary with Bambu, and while no, we're not going to buy each other flowers, we're going to be talking all about this potentially difficult relationship that I've had with them, and what I've gotten out of it, what I've found, and what might be useful to you guys as well. So I know a lot of you like those videos where we talk all about Bambu, so stay tuned next week. I think you're going to enjoy it, and I hope you do. I want to do more industry update videos like this, kind of talk about what we've seen and how we feel it's going to be changing. Let me know if you guys like this kind of thing and how often you'd like to see it. Right now, thinking every 6 months seems to be a pretty appropriate one. Do one in the middle of the year, one at the beginning of the year. I think that seems to work out well. That's really all we have for you guys today. Stay safe out there. Don't forget to call your loved ones, and as always, keep making awesome. Have a good one. Hey, thanks so much for watching this video, and a massive thank goes out to all of our channel supporters whose names are listed right next to me at the $5 tier and higher. There's more than a couple of ways to support us. Links are in that description down below. Go take a look. Tier starting as low as $1 a month as well. Right below me will be my look at Bambu's 1 year in review, taking a look at how honest I think they've actually been over this past year. Right next to that will be my look at the Soval SV06 Plus, the bigger cousin of the SV06, and yeah, pretty much just as good for my first impression. I'll see you guys down in those comments and the next one. Take care.